The hospital parking lot was eerily quiet under flickering streetlights. Marie Carter's footsteps echoed as she hurried to her car. A long shift had left her drained. But something else gnawed at her. A fear she couldn't shake after uncovering a dangerous secret. She barely noticed the shadow moving behind her until it was too late. That was the last time anyone saw her. Now, her brother Liam is on a relentless mission to find her. Racing against time and enemies lurking in the shadows. Drop a comment and share where you're joining us from. If stories like this resonate with you, hit subscribe so you don't miss our next inspiring journey coming tomorrow. The dawn broke over the coastal town, casting a soft, golden hue across the quiet streets and harbor. Fishing boats rocked gently with the tide as early risers prepared for the day's work. Seagulls circled the docks, their cries echoing across the water. In the distance, the naval base stood like a fortress, its watchtowers and ships looming in silent vigilance. Nearby, the town's veteran hospital was just beginning to stir. A place filled with both healing and hidden burdens tied to the town's long military history. Marie Carter walked briskly through the hospital corridors, her shift drawing to a close. Despite the early hour, her mind was alert. The delivery from the night before nagged at her thoughts. Crates marked as medical supplies had seemed out of place, not just because of their size, but because of the weight and the sealed nature of their contents. As a nurse who had worked here for years, Marie knew the supply routines well. This shipment didn't sit right with her. She paused by a supply room near the back of the hospital. The locked door and security camera overhead made it clear that access to the shipment was restricted. Still, the moment she had seen one of the crates open briefly during unloading flashed in her mind, gleaming metal. Too dark and heavy to be surgical equipment. Marie frowned. Maybe she was overthinking it. But her instincts told her otherwise. Exiting the hospital, she shielded her eyes from the rising sun. The breeze from the ocean carried a salty freshness, momentarily easing her tension. Still, she couldn't shake the sense that something was off. Across the parking lot, a figure lingered near the shadows of a storage building. The person appeared to be watching her. But as soon as she glanced their way, they turned and disappeared around the corner. Marie hesitated, her pulse quickening. Had she really seen someone? Or was she just feeling paranoid after a long night? Meanwhile, at a small cafe near the docks, Liam Carter sat by a window, sipping coffee. His eyes scanned the street outside as he absent-mindedly fingered the dog tags hanging under his shirt. His short leave from duty had given him a chance to catch up with Marie. But deep down, he was still grappling with the memories of his last deployment. The quiet of the town was both comforting and unsettling. It gave him too much time to think, to recall the faces of the men he had lost under his command. He checked his watch. Marie should be off her shift soon. He planned to meet her for breakfast. Maybe tease her about working too hard. She had always been the responsible one, the one who kept their lives steady after their parents passed. Liam admired her for that, even if he didn't always say it. His thoughts shifted when a patrol car rolled past slowly, its lights off. He watched it with a soldier's practiced eye, noting the way the officer inside scanned the area as if on high alert. Was something going on? Back at the hospital, Marie reached her car and hesitated again. The figure from earlier was gone, but the uneasy feeling lingered. She knew Liam would tell her not to worry, that it was probably nothing. Yet, she had learned to trust her instincts in the medical field, and they rarely led her astray. As she drove out of the parking lot, she resolved to check the shipment logs later. If something illegal or dangerous was happening under the guise of hospital operations, someone needed to speak up. The camera above the supply room silently recorded as another figure, clad in dark clothing, slipped into the area after her departure. The town might appear serene under the glow of the morning sun, but shadows had begun to stir. Marie's mind raced as she stood before the crates in the dimly lit hospital supply room. She had waited until her shift was almost over, slipping back under the guise of organizing inventory. Her fingers traced the edge of one crate. Cold metal underneath the flimsy medical supplies label. Carefully, she lifted the lid. Inside, the gleam of tightly packed weapons reflected the light from the overhead bulb, rifles, parts, and ammunition neatly arranged. A chill ran down her spine. This was no accident. Someone had arranged for these shipments to pass under the radar, disguised as hospital deliveries. She quickly resealed the crate and closed the door behind her. Her heart beat loud in her ears. This wasn't just suspicious, it was dangerous. She needed answers. She marched to Dr. Harris's office, her shoes clicking sharply on the linoleum floor. Harris was the head of hospital operations, a man known for his calm demeanor and strict adherence to protocol. He looked up from a stack of paperwork as Marie entered without knocking. "Marie," he greeted, eyebrows raised. "Is there a problem?" "I need to talk to you about the latest shipment," she said, closing the door behind her. She crossed her arms. "There are weapons in those crates, not medical supplies." For a moment, Harris's face remained neutral. But Marie noticed a flicker of something in his eyes, recognition. Perhaps. He leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. "Marie, you've been working long hours. Maybe you're mistaken," he said gently. But there was an underlying tension in his voice. "I know what I saw," she insisted. "This isn't normal. We could be involved in something illegal." Harris sighed, his gaze hardening. "Listen, you're a valued member of this staff. But some things are beyond your responsibility. My advice is to leave this matter alone. Focus on your patients." Marie's mouth tightened. "You're telling me to ignore illegal activity?" "I'm telling you to stay safe," he replied, his tone colder now. "This is bigger than you think. Drop it." She left his office feeling a growing sense of unease. His words weren't just dismissive, they were a warning. She needed help. But going to the authorities felt risky. If Harris was involved, who else could be? Later that evening, she confided in her friend Rebecca, a fellow nurse she trusted. They met outside by the staff break area, where the cool evening breeze offered some comfort. "Are you serious?" Rebecca whispered, eyes wide. "Weapons? Here?" Marie nodded. "I don't know who's behind it, but Dr. Harris basically told me to back off. I can't just let this go." Rebecca hesitated. "Marie, you're not wrong to be scared. If this is as big as it sounds, you might be in danger. You should tell your brother." Marie shook her head. "I don't want to drag Liam into this unless I have to. He's been through enough already." They talked a bit longer, but neither of them could shake the sense of dread hanging in the air. Rebecca hugged her tightly before heading home, urging her to stay cautious. The hospital parking lot was nearly deserted when Marie finally clocked out. Streetlights buzzed faintly, casting long shadows across the asphalt. She clutched her keys tightly as she walked to her car, her footsteps echoing eerily in the stillness. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to hurry. But she tried to stay calm. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw movement, a shadow detaching itself from the darkness near the storage building. Before she could react, two men emerged silently from behind parked vehicles. One grabbed her arm, yanking her back. She struggled, kicking and twisting in their grip. But the second man wrapped an arm around her waist, pinning her in place. "Let me go," she screamed, her voice echoing off the empty buildings. A security camera mounted on a nearby pole silently recorded the scene as she fought with everything she had. Her keys slipped from her hand, clattering to the ground. One of the men hissed a warning to keep quiet. But Marie didn't stop struggling until a blow to her side forced the air from her lungs. Gasping for breath, she was dragged toward a waiting van. The door slid open, and the men shoved her inside. The engine roared to life, and within seconds, the van sped off into the night. The parking lot fell silent once more, with only the flickering camera light bearing witness to the crime. Somewhere nearby, the shadowy figure who had watched her earlier observed the scene from a distance before disappearing into the night. The shrill ring of Liam Carter's phone broke the early morning stillness. He rubbed his eyes and answered groggily. "Mr. Carter? This is Diane from the Veteran Hospital. I'm calling to inform you that your sister, Marie, didn't report for her shift today. We've tried reaching her but haven't received any response. We're concerned." Liam sat up straight, suddenly wide awake. Marie was always punctual. This wasn't like her. "I'll look into it," he replied, his voice sharp with worry. He ended the call and quickly got dressed. Within half an hour, he was at Marie's apartment. Nothing seemed out of place. Her car wasn't in the parking lot, and there were no signs of a struggle inside. Still, something didn't feel right. Liam noticed a pile of paperwork on her kitchen counter, medical shipment records, but didn't linger on it. He needed more information. He decided to call Rebecca, one of Marie's closest friends. They met at a nearby coffee shop where Rebecca's expression immediately told him that she was worried. "She told me something strange," Rebecca began. "Last night, she mentioned a shipment of medical supplies that didn't seem right. She said there were weapons hidden inside. She was scared. Liam, she didn't want to involve you, but I think something bad happened." Liam's mind raced. If Marie had stumbled upon something illegal, it could explain her sudden disappearance. But who would go so far as to abduct her? He thanked Rebecca and promised to find his sister. His next stop was the hospital. Using his military experience and a firm tone, Liam persuaded a security officer to grant him access to the parking lot surveillance footage from the previous night. He watched in growing horror as the grainy video revealed two men dragging Marie into a van. She fought fiercely, but they overpowered her. The van sped off, and the footage ended with an eerie stillness. Liam clenched his fists, anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. He took note of the van's partial license plate and distinctive features. Vowing to follow the trail, he left the hospital and headed toward the docks, the last known link to the suspicious shipment. If Marie's disappearance was connected to those weapons, the answers, and the people responsible, were somewhere in this town. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel, it means so much to us. Now, let's get back to the story. The salty breeze hit Liam's face as he parked near the docks, scanning the sprawling warehouses that stretched along the coast. This area was heavily trafficked with shipments coming in and out at all hours. But he focused on a specific warehouse he had seen mentioned in Marie's paperwork. It was marked as a supplier for the hospital but looked far more fortified than a typical storage facility for medical supplies. Liam moved cautiously, blending into the shadows cast by stacked crates and shipping containers. He observed the activity from a distance. Several men in plain work clothes stood near the entrance, smoking and chatting in low voices. Security cameras rotated lazily, but there were blind spots between their coverage. Years of military experience allowed him to plot a clear path inside without being seen. He slipped through a side entrance, the faint hum of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous, its walls lined with steel racks holding both crates and large containers. He crouched behind a row of pallets, listening carefully. Footsteps echoed, followed by voices. Two men walked into view, deep in conversation. Liam strained to hear them over the ambient sounds of machinery and waves crashing in the distance. "Shipments going out next week," one man said, his voice rough. "High priority. They're sending extra security this time after the close call at the hospital." The second man nodded. "The boss isn't happy. He said we can't afford another mistake. If this blows up, we're all done." "Relax. Our guy in town's keeping things under control. No one's talking. And anyone who tries will be dealt with." Liam's jaw tightened as he processed the information. They had someone high-ranking protecting their operation. Was it Dr. Harris? Or someone else within the town's power structure? He knew now that the arms smuggling operation was extensive, with layers of protection to keep it hidden. This wasn't just a few criminals, it was an organized network. The men moved further down the aisle, their voices fading. Liam took a moment to scan his surroundings and spotted a clipboard on a nearby crate. He quietly moved toward it, skimming the manifest. It confirmed what Marie had feared: large quantities of weapons disguised as humanitarian supplies. He took photos with his phone, knowing this evidence would be critical. As he turned to leave, a noise froze him in place. A metallic clang echoed through the warehouse. Liam glanced toward the entrance and saw a dock worker stepping inside, his eyes narrowing as he looked around suspiciously. "Hey! Who's there?" the man called out, his hand moving to a radio clipped to his belt. Liam backed into the shadows, heart pounding. He needed to get out fast. The worker called for backup, and within moments, two more men entered, their footsteps heavy on the concrete floor. They spread out, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Liam moved silently, weaving between stacks of crates. He spotted an emergency exit and headed for it. But a sudden beam of light swept across his path. Ducking low, he barely avoided being seen. The men were closing in, their voices growing louder. "Check that corner. Nothing here. Spread out." Liam's mind raced. He couldn't let them trap him inside. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wrench he had found earlier. With a quick toss, he sent it clattering to the far end of the warehouse. The noise drew the men's attention, giving him the opportunity to slip out the side door. Once outside, Liam sprinted across the lot, keeping low until he reached the cover of a nearby container. He didn't stop until he was well out of sight, crouching to catch his breath. He could hear shouting in the distance but knew they wouldn't find him now. As he made his way back to his car, Liam's mind was a storm of conflicting thoughts. He had evidence of the smuggling operation. But how far did the corruption go? If someone in a position of power was involved, reporting this to the wrong authorities could backfire. He thought of Marie, abducted because she dared to question what she saw. If he exposed this operation carelessly, he might never see her again. For now, Liam decided to rely on what he knew best: his training and instincts. He needed to gather more information before taking any official action. Trust would be a luxury he couldn't afford just yet. Determined to save his sister and bring down those responsible, he drove off into the night, the shadows of the docks still lingering in his mind. Liam strode into the hospital with a singular focus. He had no time for pleasantries or protocol. After maneuvering through the corridors, he found himself outside Dr. Harris's office. Without knocking, he pushed the door open, startling the man behind the desk. "Mr. Carter?" Harris said, recovering quickly. He removed his glasses and leaned back in his chair, trying to project calm authority. "What can I do for you?" Liam closed the door and stepped forward, his eyes locked on Harris. Cut the act. I know about the shipment. I know Marie saw it. And now she's missing. You're going to tell me everything you know." Harris's expression hardened, though he maintained a veneer of composure. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said evenly. "If your sister is missing, you have my sympathy. But don't play dumb." Liam interrupted, his voice low but menacing. "Marie found weapons in those crates labeled as medical supplies. She told someone. And now she's gone. And here you are, pretending you're not involved." Harris sighed, his gaze shifting momentarily to the window. When he looked back at Liam, his tone was cold. "I'm not pretending. I manage hospital operations. But that doesn't mean I control every shipment. You think this starts and ends with me? You have no idea how deep this goes. Then enlighten me," Liam said, his fists clenching at his sides. "I can't," Harris replied after a pause. "And neither can you. The people behind this aren't the kind you confront without consequences. I've seen others try. And they didn't come back. If you care about your sister, maybe you should think about walking away." Liam leaned closer, his voice a quiet threat. "If anything happens to Marie, there won't be a place on this planet you can hide from me. Do you understand?" Harris's eyes flickered with fear, but he masked it with a nod. "You've been warned, Carter. It's your funeral." Liam stared him down for a few more moments, then turned and walked out without another word. He had confirmed what he suspected: Harris was a pawn in a much larger game. As he exited the hospital and crossed the parking lot, Liam noticed something unusual. A black sedan was parked near the entrance, its windows tinted. He felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. The car's engine roared to life as he approached his own vehicle. He got in, started the engine, and pulled out slowly, keeping an eye on the sedan. It followed him almost immediately. Liam took a deep breath, calculating his next move. He drove at a steady pace through the main streets, weaving between other vehicles. The sedan stayed close but didn't make any overt moves yet. They wanted him to know he was being followed. Reaching a quieter part of town, Liam accelerated abruptly, making a sharp right turn onto a narrow side street. The sedan followed, tires screeching as it struggled to keep up. He navigated through a maze of alleys, his mind racing. Years of combat experience kicked in as he scanned for potential escape routes. The sedan closed the distance, headlights glaring in his rearview mirror. Liam made another sharp turn, leading them into a more industrial area near the docks. He spotted a loading zone with scattered shipping containers and took the opportunity to cut his lights and swerve behind one of the containers. He killed the engine and sat in silence, listening. The sedan sped past, its tires screeching as the driver struggled to figure out where he had gone. Liam waited, muscles tense, until the sound of the car faded into the distance. When he was sure it was safe, he restarted his car and took a different route back toward town. He kept a low profile, checking his mirrors constantly. He knew this wasn't over. They had tried to intimidate him, but they had underestimated his training and resolve. His mind went back to Harris's warning: people who dig too deep don't come back. Liam smirked grimly. He wasn't the type to back down. If anything, this encounter had only strengthened his resolve. They were watching him now, which meant he was getting closer to uncovering the truth. But the next move was his, and he intended to make it count. Liam parked outside a modest bar near the industrial district, a known hangout for off-duty contractors and dock workers. Inside, the atmosphere was dim and noisy, with low conversations competing against the crackling of an old jukebox. He scanned the room until he saw Tom Mitchell sitting at a corner table. nursing a glass of whiskey. Tom looked up as Liam approached, a broad grin breaking across his face. "Liam Carter." "As I live and breathe," he said, standing to shake hands. "Been a while, brother." "Too long," Liam replied, gripping his hand firmly. "Thanks for meeting me. I need your help." Tom's grin faded as he gestured for Liam to sit. "I figured. You don't call unless it's serious. What's going on?" After ordering drinks, Liam gave Tom a quick rundown of the situation: Marie's disappearance, the weapons shipment disguised as medical supplies, and his recent run-in at the warehouse. Tom listened intently, his expression darkening. "Damn," Tom muttered, rubbing his jaw. "Sounds like you've stirred up some serious trouble. But it checks out. I've heard whispers about a major op moving through this area. They're using humanitarian fronts to transport military-grade arms." Liam leaned forward. "You know who's behind it?" "Not the whole picture," Tom admitted. "But I do know there's a shipment scheduled for next week. It's supposed to pass through the docks under heavy security. If Marie's involved, they might be holding her until that transfer goes through." "Then we don't have time to wait," Liam said. "I need to get her out. And I need to shut this down. Can you help me?" Tom nodded. "I've got clearance to access certain parts of the port. I can get us inside the restricted zones. But this isn't going to be easy. These guys play for keeps." Liam smirked. "When has it ever been easy?" The two of them spent the next hour devising a plan. Tom drew a rough layout of the warehouse and surrounding areas, marking entry points and blind spots in the security patrols. They agreed to move at night, when the activity would be lower but guards would still be stationed. Later that night, Liam and Tom crouched behind a row of shipping containers near the warehouse. Tom whispered, "Security's lighter than I expected. They must think no one's crazy enough to come after them. They're about to learn otherwise." Liam said, eyes scanning the area. The two men moved swiftly but silently toward a side entrance. Tom bypassed the electronic lock with a device he had brought, and they slipped inside. The warehouse was eerily quiet, dimly lit by overhead lights. Rows of crates towered around them, casting long shadows. They advanced through the maze-like interior, weapons drawn. Liam motioned for Tom to stop as he heard voices up ahead. They crept closer, hiding behind a stack of pallets. "I'm telling you, we should have moved her already," one guard said. "Too risky keeping her here with all the heat coming down." "Boss wants her here until after the shipment," the other replied. "We don't question orders." Liam's jaw tightened. They were talking about Marie. He and Tom exchanged a look, then moved in silently. Within seconds, both guards were subdued, knocked unconscious before they could raise an alarm. They pressed on, finally finding a small office near the back of the warehouse. Inside, Marie was tied to a chair, her face pale but alert. Her eyes widened in relief when she saw Liam. "Liam," she gasped as he rushed to untie her. "It's okay. We've got you," he said, cutting through the restraints. Tom kept watch at the door. "We need to move," Tom warned. "More guards will be here soon." As if on cue, footsteps echoed from the main floor. Armed men stormed into the warehouse, their flashlights slicing through the darkness. Gunfire erupted as the smugglers spotted them. "Go!" Liam ordered, shielding Marie as they ducked behind crates. He returned fire, hitting one of the guards. Tom laid down suppressive fire, buying them time to move. They weaved through the maze of crates, evading their pursuers. Finally, they reached an emergency exit. Tom kicked it open, and they bolted outside into the cool night air. The sounds of shouts and gunfire faded as they disappeared into the shadows of the shipping yard. They didn't stop running until they reached a secure distance. Catching his breath, Liam turned to Marie. "Are you okay?" She nodded, though her voice trembled. "I am now. You saved me." Tom held up the manifest they had grabbed during the escape. "And we've got the evidence. This operation's going down." Liam's eyes hardened. "This isn't over yet. But they're going to regret ever touching my family." Together, they vanished into the night, preparing for the next battle to come. Marie sat beside Liam on a large rock overlooking the dark, restless ocean. The salty air was cool, and the rhythmic crashing of the waves offered a small comfort. Despite being free, she was visibly shaken, her hands trembling slightly as she tucked her hair behind her ear. "The authorities have everything," Liam said, breaking the silence. "The manifests, footage, everything they need to shut this down." Marie nodded, her eyes distant. "But what if it's not enough? People in power are protecting this." "It'll be enough," Liam assured her, though he felt the same doubt deep down. "We did our part. Now they'll have to answer for what they've done." They sat quietly for a moment, letting the weight of the past few days sink in. Both knew their lives would never quite be the same again. Unbeknownst to them, a shadowy figure observed from a distance, hidden near the cliffs. Eyes narrowed, the watcher faded silently into the darkness. Minutes later, Liam's phone buzzed. He answered cautiously. A distorted voice spoke. "You should have walked away. Next time, you'll lose more than your sister." The call ended abruptly. Liam stared at the phone, his jaw tightening. It wasn't over yet. The story explores the tension between honor and corruption, particularly within military and institutional power structures. Liam's unwavering loyalty to Marie exemplifies sacrifice and duty, as he risks everything to save her. Throughout their ordeal, they face both betrayal and unexpected alliances, forcing them to navigate a web of deception. Liam's character grows as he confronts the trauma of his military past, ultimately reclaiming his sense of purpose through protecting his family. Meanwhile, Marie transforms from a victim of circumstance into an active participant, resolute in her fight for justice. Together, they prepare to face whatever threats lie ahead. Marie is safe, but the threat still looms. Who was behind the call warning Liam to walk away? Will they strike again? Share your theories in the comments. What do you think will happen next? Share your thoughts in this story with others. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.